With that, I'd like to start introductions very quickly for our team. My name is Shirley Tipton. I am a somewhat veteran burner. When I'm on playa, I camp with Astral Head Wash. If you've ever had a head wash on playa, that's our camp. We love that place and can't wait to get back our hands back into sudsy water and dirty hair. I know it's creepy, but that's what we do. And we're also, along with Lion and a few other people, we are moderators and facilitators for Hive Labs. And so we're here to share with you our experience around what we've been doing on Hive Labs and some things that have worked and not worked for us, and also to elicit some really great best practices and maybe worst practices from you all. And with that, I'd like to invite our team to continue introductions. Lion, would you like to go?
That sounds great. I am Lion. I feel like I am a virgin burner, quasi-virgin burner. This would have been my 5th year. I've been the lead of a camp that lives on the 9 o'clock side. We call ourselves LED Dinosaur. And it's very nice to meet all of you. As Shirley mentioned, we have been mods of the Hive Labs platform, which is why we were invited to come talk to you about moderating social media interactions. And we are really excited to talk a little bit more with you today.
Thank you. Jim.
My name is Jim Taflinger. I am living in Athens, Georgia. I am a regional contact for Georgia. I'm also involved with Burners Without Borders on their advisory board, and I also co-facilitate the LEOs, which is Local Leadership Event Organizers, which is a group of individuals who regionally put on programs similar to this in the various, like Northeast, Southeast, usually once a year. So anyway, that is me.
Thank you, Jim. Jim will be our chat moderator this evening as well. So if you have a burning question and you're at risk of forgetting it in 10 seconds, go ahead and pop it into the chat, and Jim will be looking for those and helping us to see them. Otherwise, you can use the raise hand button, which you will find under reactions at the bottom of your screen. So if you move your cursor down to the bottom, there's something that says reactions. You can use that to provide semi-live commentary on whatever's happening, but also to raise your hand for a question. And our tech moderator this evening is Comac. Would you introduce yourself if you're comfortable?
Hey, yeah,
hey.
I'm a longtime burner. I've been a Black Rock Ranger since 2009, and also an Alberta Ranger for a similar amount of time, including when we were known as just Freezer Burn Rangers. Freezer Burn, 2 words, which is the Alberta Regional Burn.
Thank you all for joining us. Thanks for your support, Jen and Comac, as well. I'll also shout out that Laura Hopwood is here with us, that you all as regional contacts probably already know. And she'll be providing some excellent support and information as she pops in and out. So, Lion, do you have a question for the group?
I do. Well, so I wanted to start off with asking all of our participants if there are any specific questions or incidents or anything that brought them to be with us today before we get started and introduce what we might want to talk about.
Okay, let's see how those develop. So Lion, I'm also going to prevail upon you to dive in a little bit about Hive and what we've been doing there by way of introduction.
Yes, so Shirley and I have been working as mods for this platform called Hive. And just to take a pause, has anybody here heard of Hive? Yes, okay, I see a couple of hands. Does anybody feel confident enough in their knowledge of Hive to speak like a sentence or two about what Hive is? Oh, birthday, is your thumbs raised because you want to speak about Hive?
because I've heard of it, I don't want to be able to explain it.
Okay, Shirley, will you give a brief explanation, or because otherwise I'll talk for the whole time.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, it's kind of like electricity, right? We've heard about it, but we may not really know what it does or how it works. So Hive Labs is a platform hosted by Mighty Networks in conjunction with the rest of the Burning Man org. And so on Hive Labs, we have some, general goals, specific goals, but some also unspoken goals. And one of them is to not be Facebook. It is a space for creating connection and community, and also for putting forward self-directing projects. So we have already completed a 5-week social labs process, the Ride Labs on racism, inclusion, diversity, and equity, sustainability labs. There's been a wellness component, and then the overarching also Hive Labs process. Out of that, several groups have already formed and are working on very specific projects, including the Playa Arts Collective, which is a group of experienced Playa artists are coming together with people who are interested in creating art for Playa and helping them get that done by virtue of experience. In sustainability, there's a solar group that has broken off. There's a group who are working to create a communal kitchen for Hoverlandia, for those people who come in mostly from long distance and stay in Hoverlandia camp. They come in by bus. So creating new resources. There's a group forming around resource sharing. So let's say a camp has a lot of shade structure and they want to upgrade, but they also don't want to just get rid of their existing shade structure, and they're willing to gift it to another camp who could then rehabilitate it and see something that they've got going. You also have the ability on Hive Labs to find out what other members of the Hive are near you, who's in your region. So it's a great way to create community within your literal community, within your geographic community. So you can work on projects directly together. And I find that is to be one of the most exciting parts of it. There are also courses on the Hive, courses in leadership, in how to write a course. There are links to request the start of your own cluster on all kinds of concepts. If you have a project that you've really been itching to go, that's where we want to have you. We also want to invite our regional contacts to consider, if you're having difficulty with some other social platforms, you can consider moving your group onto Hive as well for hosting there and to get you out of the more free-for-all world of Facebook or whatever platform, whatever else you might be using. So that's kind of the generic overview of what we've been doing on Hive. If you haven't already joined it, all you need is your burner profile. You go to burningman.org, Hive, open up with your burner profile, and you will be able to join the Hive, and we would love to see you there. So we'll also note, thank you, Laura, all forum participants are invited to join the Hive, and there's a link that makes it easier to do in the chat.
So I have some color that I can add to that wonderful explanation. Thank you so much, Shirley. But before I do, does anybody have any questions, or does what Shirley has said so far make sense to people?
I've got a quick question. So the audience is basically all burners in general?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And I have a question.
Yes.
I'm on the website now and just kind of exploring a little bit. How long has the website and the Hive been active?
I think they started sometime last year. It's been running internally for a while with people getting used to it. The social labs part of it began about two and a half months ago, I think now. Does that sound right, Laura, to you? Yeah. So we've moved beyond beta to real world live applications.
Okay, okay. Well, I'm always glad to be introduced to some of these newer things on the site. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and I think so. One of the things that I'd like to speak to is some of the motivation behind creating Hive in the first place. And the org did a series of focus groups, quite a few focus groups last fall, trying to test the concept of a new platform for people to communicate with. And there were a couple of themes that came up pretty often. One of them was that burners really wanted to connect with other burners and be able to plan things, whether it be plan art installations or share knowledge or do civic projects or a whole range of other ideas. People really wanted to connect. And that's what one of the reasons that Hive exists. And another reason that people were really looking for was they wanted more control than the average social network had. So people like how easy it is to connect on Facebook, but they don't like how there are trolls on Facebook. And one of the alternatives that we have on Hive, when you, so we have mods on Hive, people like Shirley and myself. And if you have an interaction with people that is not a pleasant interaction, we invite you to reach out to us and talk to us about it. And when you do, we promise we will respond. And we will take a look at that interaction. Maybe there's a situation where there's somebody who is actually a troll and has bad intentions. And if that is the case, we can address that and potentially remove that person from the platform. Maybe the situation is that somebody has said something that they thought was a joke or was not that serious, and somebody else interpreted as very serious. And we can help bridge the gap and actually help people learn and grow, where we can show them that like your intentions were this, but the impact of your statement was this. And we can help people bridge the gap between that and make sure that their statements that they're making and how they're acting are in line with their intentions. So I'll pause because I just talked for a while. Does that make sense to everyone? Does anybody else have any questions from that?
One of the things that I think we've noticed is that by virtue of having a burner profile, like you've already made some sort of commitment to the 10 principles. So using that as an entry into this platform is different than the universal approach to Facebook. So there is a slightly higher threshold to entry, but also at least a glancing familiarity with the 10 principles. And knowing that this is a platform where we're going to really, work to call people in and not call people out. That's not what we do in moderation or facilitation. We have some guidelines around that. We want to be respectful, first and foremost. We want to be curious about a behavior before we judge it. Like substitute curiosity for judgment, which I have to confess is really hard for me to do when I'm watching the evening news most days. But substituting curiosity for judgment and using those kinds of just mindset and heart set as we go into facilitation can really help us get into that place of having real conversation and never missing an opportunity to make a human connection. Now, that being said, we also don't want to eliminate the snarkiness of Burning Man overall, right? Like we want to have room to have fun, and we need to have fun. God knows after being cooped up for a year and a half, we need to have some damn fun. And this is one place we want to continue to have that. Lion, do you want to share a little bit about a difficult moment we had in labs?
I do. I thought that you were leading me up to this story, and I'm glad that you were. We're on the same page. Yeah, so I just want to talk a little bit about one of the experiences that we've had so far in Hive. And we had a member that was participating in our RIDE group, which for anybody that doesn't know, RIDE is Radical Inclusion, Diversity, and Equality. And to set the context, this person would show up to our Zoom meetings, and in the corner of her screen, there would be a framed picture of Vladimir Putin. And that was something that this person felt very strongly about, that they were a person that they're a person that really identified with that as being a good person. And in fact, when we had a prompt in one of our RIDE meetings, the question was asked to say something that requires courage. And this person's response to that was to say that they loved Vladimir Putin. And that was something that they felt required courage to say in a group setting. So this was the first step of the interaction. We continued on our talk, and later in the interaction, there was a prompt that was asking people, Shirley, you can help me, and I don't know if you were in this meeting, and you can help me get the wording exactly right if you were, but what prevents you from being a good person? And to not belabor the point, the person in question's response to that prompt was a joke about rape. And the person in question thought that it was a funny joke. And meant it as not being serious in their mind. And one of the other people in our group did not think that any joke about rape was not that serious. So this presented a very serious quandary, crossroads, whatever you'd like to call it, in our moderation, because on one hand, the person who said the comment was not intending to be offensive. And to the extent that you'll believe that, I personally followed up with them. I had a conversation with them and explained how the conversation was interpreted by other people in our group. They were very upset and sorry and embarrassed that they had put other people in a challenging position. So they were very upset about it. The person who received the comment initially wanted to have that person who made the comment removed from the chat. So let me take a pause there. We had a person in our chat that made a strongly worded comment that they thought was a joke. We had a person in our chat that received that comment as very triggering, and that was the thing that we had to figure out what to do. So if we can take a pause, do any of the people who are here have thoughts on how they might have handled a situation like that? We'd love, if you feel comfortable unmuting and speaking about it, then we'd love to hear it. But if you'd like to chat, type in the chat as well, that would be great too.
Well, I'd be curious to see, in that it's an open forum and the Zoom call, I assume, was open forum, that to have those two people have a conversation, just to have, because that's a safe zone. I mean, like, it's not like you're in person and there's going to be any kind of physical contact. Just, I mean, it's one of the, I think one of the advantages of the online media is that you can be there and yet be detached enough physically or emotionally, or you can express yourself.
Yeah, love it. Does anybody else feel good about sharing?
I'll share. I've been on Clubhouse. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that app. It's been around. I joined, actually Andy Grace invited me back in March, and I'm a Bitcoin maximalist, so I've been in all the Bitcoin rooms. And one thing that I found, because they can get quite contentious, because people come in and try and shield shit coins, as they say, is having really clearly established rules for the room, and people just shut people down. I mean, like, hey, this is not room for that. This is not how we discuss that. You know, we only discuss things civilly, and I've just been very impressed how good moderators are able to, like, literally take some ranting person and kind of like, hey, you either play by our rules or you don't get to play. And so I think I've become a little bit of a fan for strong moderation, because as nice as it is, that totally free-form stuff, I can see where things can go kind of awry or AWOL, and trying to get that conversation on track is a real challenge, and I think requires a good moderation.
Thank you.
Neuron
Thank
and
you.
George. I'm sorry, Larry.
Yeah. No, Shirley, please, you first.
Yeah, I want to, thank both of you for venturing forth with comments. And I think there is a good argument to be made for having really strong cultural norms, right? Forewarned is great. I'm a great believer that clarity is kindness. Being clear up front, this is what we're here to do. This is why we're here to do this. And if that's not what you want, then this might not be the forum for you. And Neuron, to actually have a conversation, that might also be something that can be taken offline easily as well, depending on the comfort level of the participants. And that's something you really have to gauge individually, but making connection. One of the things that we know, and as Laura shared with me earlier, has come out in other breakout sessions, is that people are really feeling a need to be heard. We have been shut down, especially as burners, for so long. We have had families fractured over politics and friendships lost. How do we heal and get back to what it is that most of us really love about burner culture? And that is that we connect at more of a heart level, right? And we can set the default world aside. Now, how can we in this Burning Man culture go on into an online platform and not espouse the 10 principles? How can we not? Right? I'm committed to that. It'd be my expectation of anyone who wants to connect with me in this kind of online forum. Because if I don't want that, I mean, I can go to Twitter, I can go to, oh, God forbid, Facebook, right? And get all kinds of abuse. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to create community. I want to heal relationships. I want to deeply listen. And I will tell you that first and foremost, the role of a moderator / facilitator is to listen. And I can't tell you how many people I know that will tell you they're really good listeners, and they're not. They're not listening. They're listening to respond. As a facilitator and a moderator, and this works for chat forums as well, for the written word, you want to be curious before you judge. You want to listen with an open heart. You want to listen reflectively and say, Lion, did I understand you to say this? And if you didn't, correct me. Help me understand that. And mean it, by golly, because you're likely to uncover something that maybe you didn't know before, right? You're almost always going to discover something you didn't know before. So in the example that Lion used, both of those people, once inquiry was made of them and the moderators got a better understanding, they were able to bridge the gap between those two people, clarify things, bring about some healing, and reconnect. We don't always get that opportunity. Does that make sense? Yeah. What kind of experiences have you guys had out there in your platforms? Why are you here right now? What did you come to learn or to share about?
Well,
Yes. Let's have Shelley share first, if you would.
Shelley and the Neuron.
Hi there. I'm part of Kiwi Burn and have been helping manage the social media pages for probably 10 years or more, since Facebook sort of started doing it, and seeing all the changes and the tools that they they offer for admins. And it's been fantastic to have all these different options, like muting someone for a few days, or being able to delete comments and give reasons why, like share the rules of the group, to develop the rules of the group. It's been really fantastic, making the sort of job as an admin a bit more neutral, so it's not your personal opinion. We also have maybe 5 moderators, and we have we actually have a Facebook Messenger chat where we discuss the pros and cons of something that's been reported or something that's a little bit off. So it's, even though you think, you react quite quickly and maybe think, I really want to delete this, this is really not appropriate, it's actually really fantastic to have that conversation with other admins, to talk through, hey, well, actually, maybe I know that person has a bit of history or whatever. So you get a very balanced solution, using whatever tools you have available. But in saying that, I've seen Facebook change a lot, as we all have, and feel that it's time for KiwiBurn to move away from Facebook as the main source of conversation, and something I brought up a year ago at our summit as an idea, and also brought it up again last week when I had the opportunity to talk at our summit. So seeing Hive, I've only just become an RC and only just got onto Hive, so I'm not actually sure of all its capabilities, but from just what you've been saying just in this session, it sounds like it's absolutely the future of, or that sort of idea is the future of where the conversation can happen. So that's why I joined today, because I have experience with managing social media, but I'm looking at different ways of connecting burners in our community.
Okay, thank you, Shelley. I want to also add that you can create, for example, a Kiwi burner cluster or special group on the Hive that you would still self-administer, right? Like you wouldn't lose the control that you currently have, and you'd probably have some additional controls made available to you as well.
And then would you imagine that we'd have thousands of people being able to connect within that group? Yeah.
So Shelley, if I may, what you're talking about is exactly what we're envisioning that Hive can be. And that was the biggest part of feedback that people gave to us, again, in the focus groups, is that they really wanted to connect with people, but they wanted to do it in like a pure, honest, like open way. Like they didn't want to deal with trolls. They didn't want to deal with people who were who had negative intentions. They just like really wanted to find an easy, quick way to connect with other burners. So one of the best things about Hive itself is that an intrinsic feature is that if you sign in and you tell Hive what your location is, there's an option to look at all the members of Hive, and you can sort by the members that are closest to you. And so we think that that will be a really helpful feature for people in the regionals, because if you're RC, you can literally go on Hive and you can see everyone who is closest to you, and you can try and reach out to all of them and see if they want to be involved. So this is what we're striving for. And I'm actually curious. We've had the idea thrown around for a little bit about a strong moderator, i.e. a moderator that steps in and does things, if I can loosely define it as that. So how do people in this chat feel about having or being a strong moderator? And would everyone be willing to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Do you approve or disapprove of the idea of a strong moderator?
I'm not sure what things a strong moderator could do.
So a strong moderator would look at a conversation and possibly decide that it is an unhelpful conversation and might even ban somebody who participates in that conversation if they think that it's a very extreme offense. Is that something that a moderator should be able to do, is the question. Yeah.
I'll give it a sideways.
So
I've got a pretty strong opinion on this because we have one of the most notorious Facebook groups, Burning Flipizens, which is a home of snark and villainy, and it's not a good introduction to the community at all. We have our official Facebook page, but that doesn't get any traffic. All the action is on Flipizens, and we've dealt with some racial strife between North Texas and South Texas, and some other just pretty intense conversations. And what has come out of that is we have a team of moderators. This is not an official Facebook group for Flipside. It just has become organically ever since Facebook's been around. Flipizens have been around, and so there's actually a team of moderators that pretty much monitor it 24/7. And if somebody comes in and starts seriously trolling, they'll basically give them a warning in the chat, and then ban and take them out.
Can I ask you?
Sorry.
Oh, please continue. I will ask you a question when
and so we found that it's been controversial. Not everybody agrees with every decision, and some people feel that it's too heavy-handed. But I've seen the group without good moderation, and it was a shit show. I mean, it's like everybody wanted to watch the accident, so it had plenty of people on the audience, so to speak. But you would literally see people just going at it over various topics, and some of it got really pretty serious, especially when it turned out we had some people that were pretty racially insensitive, that to me is reemphasized the importance of inclusion and all that. And I think that especially for an official, this is why I'm excited about Hive, is because it is an official platform. It is something that is not just some random person is going to run the show. I think that the fact that it's on your platform is going to enable maybe a little bit softer hand, because you've got the community rules, you've got everything that's stated, and hey, you can appeal to their community sense of belongingness. But you have to, I think, have somebody who's enabled and empowered to hit the delete button if stuff gets really bad. Especially just before I forget, where things get really bad is when you get people literally personally outing people for behavior. I went to this party, and hey, this person is a predator, and then you get into all that stuff. I mean, that just goes sideways so quick, and all of a sudden you've got different groups of people that are defending the people and not defending the people. And I mean, I've seen that. I mean, every year we have some sort of blow up like that, where people bring their personal grievances to Facebook, and that is like the first thing to pretty much get you deleted.
Well, and I think that one thing that you mentioned that's resonated with me is when you talked about it not being a good look. And I think that as like a moderator of a Burning Man community, we have some responsibilities to think about how potential burners are going to look at this interaction. So if this is on Facebook in public, is this a thing that is a conversation that is really helped by happening in public? Or can we maybe bring these people who are having the conflict together and have them talk about it in a way that doesn't air the dirty laundry in front of everyone? That doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk about things. It just means that maybe some things should be talked about in the family and not on the street, if that makes sense to people. Do folks have thoughts
It
about
does, and
that?
the other thing, I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but is one thing that we were effectively able to shut down were people promoting commercial ventures. So I think that having an appeal to the 10 principles is kind of where you start, and you know, hey, so, sorry, I'm excited about your party, but that's not really, you know, that really has nothing to do with, you know, if it's not Burning Man related, then maybe it needs to go somewhere else, you know, and
But
somebody needs to say
also,
that.
so there are legitimate discussions we have as well surrounding support for the community. So like, say I am a burner and I may have the need for getting a massage, and there may be another burner who gives massages that live in my area. I might want to go to them because I may want to support the community. And so I think there is an opportunity to discuss these issues, and that is part of the things that we have to deal with as moderators, is how do you create a space where this discussion can happen in a positive and productive way, and that's not just, hey, I hate you, you suck.
So I want to ask you all to think about something for a minute. So let's assume we're in a burner only platform, whatever it is, but we're loving and our fellow burners. Think about the last year and a half. Think about the last 5 years. Think about any kind of contentious anything you've got going. And next, think about how you might want to reach across that divide to find common space. What do you have in common? How do you get there? Is that a reminder about cultural norms? Is it a graded discussion, right? You start out with a gentle reminder to stronger reminders to, look, I'm a mother and a grandmother. I'll come give anybody a stern talking to that needs it. I won't, but how do you look at that conversation coming back to wholeness, right? Because it's really easy to write a set of rules and you'll spend all of your time being rule bound and not mission driven. I want to live in a mission driven way and not bound by rules. And yet I know that isn't shared by everyone. Some of us really need more structure. I tend to lean towards structure. Other people don't do well with that. But how do we find that place of listening, being curious about the behavior, right? Moderating our own emotions long enough to try to figure out where that person's coming from. Are they really that upset about fill in the blank, or is there something else going on for them? Is it something deeper where we can connect over what we have in common? And I think there are a lot of ways, but that's always going to be my direct approach to facilitation and moderation, is to listen first, to listen respectfully, to look for a place of ground. And if someone is really out of line, I have no problem bouncing them from a forum, whether it's chat, social media, a live session like this. I have no problem doing that. And sometimes it's necessary for the wholeness of the group. But one of the things I would encourage you all to do is really look at yourself as a moderator, as a facilitator, and how do you facilitate connection? Facilitate means make it easier, right? Provide context, provide the space, right?
We have a question from Marley about, can you give an example of what type of conflict would come to that level that you would have to get involved, or a moderator?
Yeah. Jim, thank you. I want to give that question to the group. What do you think? Let's talk about it. Shelley.
Yeah, we had just last week, we just announced the theme for Kiwiburn next year, and you know, it's simple. Some people didn't like it. But some people it totally resonated with, and some people started getting really negative in the commenting and not understanding that perhaps the person who submitted that theme might be reading. So just as a way of moderating that, instead of deleting their comment or turning off commenting or anything, it was just a, hey, just a reminder to respect other people. And then that conversation became a personal conversation between me and someone, because it was a friend of mine who went, oh my gosh, I'm really sorry, I didn't even think like that. And I said, well, that person might be reading this. Like, oh my God, I'm just going to shut up now. So small example, but good example of just nicely managing a situation that was escalating.
Shelley, can I press you to give us a little bit more context on how you felt about this? So the people who commented in a negative way, what was your reaction to that? Like, did you feel like they made a cogent point and had things that were worth considering, or did they seem like they were just being trolly and you didn't like that?
They weren't making any relevant points. They were just expressing their emotion. When it got down to it, which I didn't realize at the time, but where that came from for them was they had submitted a theme themselves, which they had thought was better. So it was ego, and it was unnecessary, and it was mean.
So I think that that's a really important thing to consider. One of the things that we look at when we are considering comments is what is the intention of the comment? And even if the intention is that I thought my shit was better than your shit, that's different from like, I want you to feel bad. Does that make sense to everyone? And so like, the way that you deal with somebody who says, I thought that my shit was better is different than the way you deal with somebody who's like, I want you to feel bad. And the person who's, I want you to feel bad, that's not a person that we need in our community. And I think that there's not a lot of disagreement on that. The person who says, I thought my shit was better, that is, I think, one of the things that we can do as the burn is help people be better. And that's okay. You can have feelings and you can think that your shit is the best shit, and I love that. And also, you're not the one who makes the decisions, and that wasn't the decision. So like, we have to accept things that happen. Does that feel okay with people?
Yeah, and we left the comments up. We didn't delete the negative comments. If they wanted to, they could delete their comment, which does happen sometimes. But you know, sometimes we do delete comments if they get reported, or delete posts. Yeah, people just get it. It's that passion that burners have. They sometimes forget how something might affect someone else.
Yeah, I think that that's such an important thing to keep in mind, that the people, especially burners, have a lot of passion. And sometimes that comes out in ways that are very strong words. That doesn't mean that they don't like you or us or anything else. That just means that they feel things and they want to express it. And that can be a thing that we can do as people who are part of the community, is hold space for them and say, that's okay. Be upset, yell, and then we'll still participate next year. Yeah, Neuron.
So one of the reasons I'm here today is because I see the difficulty and complexity. If it were some other forum outside of Burning Man, I think it would be a lot easier to come up with a solution. But if you apply the 10 principles, I mean, the majority of them are, self-expression, radical inclusion, and radical self-expression. I see one there that kind of helps to confine. It would be civic responsibility. If I were to just pick one, that you set some rules, and as everyone agrees to the rules, then you take into mind the other people. But within this, the 10 principles, it's hard for me to see where a strong moderator fits into that. And again, I myself, you know, any other forum, I could see how it's an easy solution, you know, just what you're discussing. But within a forum within a Burning Man site, that's where I'm curious how you get around that.
What if I told you that the 10 principles were the moderator? And that one of the things that we can do as stewards of our Burning Man space is to help make sure that everyone remembers the 10 principles.
Well, if someone's expressing themselves in, and again, I want you to know at the outset that I don't think someone should do this, but I'm wondering, how do you express to that person who's here that they shouldn't be expressing themselves when they, if they tell a joke that they think is funny, but someone else doesn't, you know, how do you express to them that they shouldn't do it?
Well,
and that was a, you know, probably not the most common thing, but certainly, well, let me just throw in one more point here, because I'm often noticing on most forums, it's that act of anonymity, although perhaps the Hive would be less anonymous since you're, you know, you have an online profile perhaps. But when I see these flame wars happening on Reddit and Twitter and even Facebook, I get a sense that these are people that don't really know each other and that they feel like they can pretty much say whatever they think. But if they were in person in the same room, I have a feeling they wouldn't be saying any of those things. I don't know if that's true.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
no-
funny that, sorry, go ahead, Shirley.
No, go with your thought, Lion.
Well, I know I was going to talk about how I've been monopolizing the conversation, but this is the situation that came up with the case that I mentioned about the person who made the joke about rape in our conversation that thought they were being funny, and in that particular situation, the party that said the offensive comment did not mean it to be offensive. And the second that we talked to her about that being an offensive comment, they were very apologetic and they're like, I did not mean that. Was not my intention. And so I think a lot of the time there is a gap between like intent is a big thing that people need to understand, that you may interpret it one way and the way that you interpret it is very valid, and the way that somebody intended something may not be the same as the way that you interpreted it, if that makes sense. And I think that that's what we can do as moderators, is help people understand that your intent is valid, your interpretation is valid, and we're all just people and we got to get along and we have to deal with those two things.
Thank you, Lion and Noran. I want to go on that just a little bit and maybe give it a slightly different perspective on that. But before I do, I want to go back really quickly to Marley's comment about, is there a need, or question, is there a need for a super moderator, or can most things be handled with a community? Marley, it is my heartfelt belief that everything can and should be handled by that community. It's ownership. It's human connection. It's forming relationship. It's getting to know each other, right? And a super moderator can come in and, especially like in George's example, would seriously want one there, but not in a burner community. And one of the things I'm going to be embarking on soon as volunteer coordinator for Hive is looking for people, some of you perhaps, who might want to volunteer to be moderators, either within your own clusters or in other groups that might be looking for moderation, where you can blend a little bit of time every week or every month, or for specific purposes, in doing exactly that, in becoming part of a community where you can exercise that role of moderation. So I'm going to put that out there. And then in that example, hang on, Jim, I'll get right back to you, of a negative joke or a triggering joke. What Lion was talking about is the moderators in that case got curious about that behavior. Like, where did that come from? What is that joke about? And by asking the question, they found out it wasn't intended to be mean. It came through an ignorant, literally a lack of education about how that topic in a joke is not funny to most of us, right? But it started with a spark of curiosity that led to listening, that led to connection, that led to healing. And almost all facilitation can go through those steps, all moderation in some level. Man, I'm not sure I get why you think that's funny. Tell me more. Just saying something like, tell me more. I don't understand. The other thing that can be very helpful as a moderator facilitator is to say, I need your help with something. Because the human tendency is to leap into that space and say, oh, I'm here to help you. What do you need? Help me understand, right? I need you to help me understand. So that's another facilitating technique that I've seen to be very effective. Jim, what were you going to share?
I was going to ask, and there's very, very few people, but I think in most regions, there are people who are banned from the Facebook groups. They may be banned from the regional burns. They're just not good people for whatever reason, and they've not fit into the community. And so we get on Hive and we run into them. So do we contact you and say, you know, this guy is scamming people or he's looking for underage people? What's the process on that? Because they're known at the local level, but they just find a new place to lurk around.
Jim, that's
Definitely, if they're breaking laws, please let us know.
yeah, that's an excellent question. So to answer your question, absolutely yes. There is a core team for Hive that will listen and take on anything that we need them to take, and they will jointly and communally make their very best decision possible around that individual joining, participating, having access. That is not something that we're going to put onto a person who's a volunteer moderator without the tools and resources to make a good decision necessarily. But if there's behavior that rises to the level, we absolutely have a team in place that will deal with it appropriately.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that information would stay confidential.
Absolutely.
Just like the policies we do here.
Yeah, 100%. And the team will take on that responsibility, and that will be the end of it. There was a situation I encountered because as a moderator, I was welcoming people into labs as they joined. And there was a person who came in who very immediately started sharing really over personal, very difficult details of their life, and led into a discussion of a partner's impending suicide. I mean, there were a lot of flags being raised for me around potential violence and mental health. And I had the confidence in knowing I could elevate that to the core team. They acted on it immediately, contacted that individual and interceded in a way that was both loving and respectful, but also got that person the help and the listening ear that they needed, right? That's what we do as community.
Works for me.
Anybody else? Specific examples, stories, questions?
Hi there, it's Andy in the UK, Tetris.
Hey, Tetris.
Hello. I'm just driving back from an event. It's 3 in the morning, but I thought I bet the conference is still on, and it's a great topic for me. So I'm a moderator on the Burning Man 2022 Facebook group, and there aren't any official burner, anybody in the regionals as I understand it. So I got in touch with them, got to know them, and said, hey, I'd be interested in helping out here. And they were very, very receptive to it. And so I've now introduced questions when somebody joins the group, for example. So about the principles and the moderation. There is a lot to be done. And it was really interesting to hear the discussion. Obviously, this is not an official group, but with 100,000 members all over the globe, it's really important we use it and utilize it as best we can to share, the right information, the right events. What's been difficult for me at the moment is knowing what to allow regarding Plan B. Has there been a discussion on that already in this call?
Tell me more about what you're asking, Andy. I'm not sure I understand regarding Plan B for.
Well, so the event the non-event that's going to be taking place in the desert this year. So there's going to be a lot of people showing up, and there's a lot of content and discussions being put in the group, and some I let through and some I don't, because I feel they're not balanced enough, and they're perhaps too overly encouraging without giving a balanced idea of what it's really going to be like on the playa this year. And it would be great to get some kind of an official nod from Burning Man to, obviously they've already distanced themselves, but I honestly am worried there's going to be a lot of sparkle ponies showing up expecting an actual event when, we know it's going to be anything but, and it could be a total shit show. And I use that because the porta potties are a major concern. It just feels like it's being just left right now. And if there are any resources or any tips from anybody, I'd be really happy to hear them.
Yeah, Andy, first of all, I am not even in the least empowered to speak in any way about the organization. And so my answer, sadly, to your question is I have no idea. Laura, do you have anything that might be helpful for Andy?
I think Burning Man Journal has posted on this topic, and really it's that anybody is welcome to go to the playa. It is public land. And so I appreciate personally what you're describing. Yeah, there's no reason why people can't go. And we hope that people go and represent Burning Man, or burners, I should say, well, but it's a little bit out of our control. It's not really in our control per se. So I don't have anything more for you either at this point. I might have to do a little asking and see, but I think everything that the organization can do or is doing will be communicated on the Burning Man Journal. And that's the place to kind of keep an eye out for information.
And that is what I'm doing, thanks. I have been sharing journal articles regularly and pointing people to them, and trying to help people understand the fact that it is not going to be a burn. And yes, people are permitted, but last year there were a few thousand, and it went okay because I think they were mostly people who live within driving distance and just decided to go for it. But this year I'm seeing so many people planning on flying in and not really, I think, understanding and recognizing that there's just no infrastructure. And if they're flying in, I think they're going to be expecting to just head out there and make it happen. And I don't believe that's going to be possible. So for most. So no, I'll keep pointing to the journal entry. Really keen to see if anybody had any of the nuggets on there. Thanks.
Yeah, I think we started to lose you at the end there, Andy. But I would say just briefly on that I feel like there are people who are involved in this that feel your pain and your concern on this. And one of the things that Hive has been created for is to be a community to share resources. So we hope that that is one of the things that we can do, is that for people who are trying to go to the event, that they can use it to communicate and to coordinate. I'd say that the thing that we have been told about Hive specifically is that it is a way for us to organize amongst ourselves and is not necessarily a valve for communicating back to the organization. That doesn't mean that they won't listen or are not looking, because they have members who are participating in Hive. But that's I'll cap it there. We hear what you're saying though. I feel you, Andy.
Yeah, yes, that's all I could say. Zoran talked earlier in the chat about civic responsibility and communal effort. Thank you, Man Ray, for that. And also noting that we all have our own blind spots. That we've hopefully all of us been learning more about things like confirmation bias and implicit bias and all the biases we have and our own blind spots, including as moderators and facilitators. Right? Like I have a real bias against obviously angry people. I don't want to play. I'm not, you know, and yet I am called upon and compelled to engage with people's high emotion as a facilitator. Remember, the best thing I can do is to listen and perhaps find a way to communicate through that emotion. So Man Ray, thank you so much for that. I think it's a really great reminder. Lion, what else you got? Oh, and Marley also notes that there's a Renegade Burn Reddit community. Haven't seen it? You're welcome to check that out as well.
I'm kind of interested if anybody who's here hasn't had a chance to speak. Y'all came to this breakout session for some reason. So is there anything that we haven't talked about that y'all have on your minds?
I just think it's good at what you're doing. You know, my real concern is we're getting ready to go through a generational shift. And those of us who have been around for a while, we're rolling off slowly but surely. And I'm not sure the whole historical, you know, be it talk about BWB and Peru or Tom Price or, you know, some even the younger individuals not knowing what Baker's Beach is, to, you know, BlackRock Labs and those types of things. I'm afraid we're going to lose part of the history, which is so important in reinforcing of why we have the 10 principles and why we have the culture that we have. And I think that's one of your challenges, is to make sure that we're getting people into the Hive and that's being addressed with them however you feel best. I'm not an educator. I have no idea. But I really, really sense that as we roll off, I mean, I'll be 67 this year, that the younger people, 20 and 30, we're not passing on the information like we should. That's all I've got to say.
Thanks, Jim. I'll also point out that on Hive, there is a place for where people are invited to tell their own stories about Burning Man. And there's also a burner history, the history of Burning Man as a course, which includes answers or reflections on everything that Jim just mentioned, I think. Maybe not BlackRock Labs, but maybe.
That was fairly recent.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think so. But it's a great resource. I mean, I learned a lot. And I thought, you know, as I want to do, I thought I knew everything. And I found out I didn't.
I mean, as people are driving towards the playa, do they realize where the Gerlach High School solar panels came from? And there's stories like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I fully agree that I think that that's what the ideal purpose of Hive is just to be a thing that facilitates the transfer of information. So we want to be able to connect people with the knowledge with people who want knowledge. And I love that story. My favorite thing about going to the burn in our camp is the gentleman who has been for 23 years, who always has a new story to tell us about one year that some crazy shit happened to him on the burn. And getting the knowledge from the people who have come before and understanding the footsteps that we walk in is like one of my favorite things. And I think that to touch back again to some of the feedback that we had for the focus groups that led to Hive being created is that people really wanted to be connected with other burners. And everyone is welcome to comment, but I think that that is something that probably resonates with a lot of people, is that you meet people on the playa, you meet people off the playa who are burners, and you just instantly connect with them, and you want to know more because you just assume that they're good people.
We learn through storytelling. Bye.